If you are constantly thinking about food, fear that you'll never stop eating if you honor mental hunger, and are worried that you'll quote-unquote swing to the other side and gain weight forever if you give in to your extreme hunger, you are in for a treat. My third book, How to Beat Extreme Hunger, Find Food Freedom Without Losing Control, is nearing publication and will soon be available for your consumption. Pun totally intended. I spent nearly a decade of my life trapped in the cage of restriction. From calorie counting to weighing food and tracking minutes exercised, my life revolved around rules and numbers. It wasn't until I committed to full recovery that a new beast was unleashed. Extreme hunger. Just like that, my hyper-controlled, perfect eating plan transformed into an insatiable hole of hunger. Thoughts about food tugged so hard that the only option was to eat until I felt physically sick, and yet I still wanted to eat more food. If you resonate with this little story, you're not alone. Unlike most diet recovery books that just don't quite hit home, How to Beat Extreme Hunger takes a gender-inclusive, neurodiversity-affirming approach to making peace with food and your body. To be the first to hear when my Extreme Hunger book is published, be sure to get on the waitlist at livelabelfree.com/extreme hunger book. And now, let's get back to today's episode.
In front of the other, and you'll be around the corner soon.
Welcome to Live Label Free, the podcast, where you'll learn to let go of limiting labels and embrace your unique brain. As my mom says so beautifully in her song, which is why on this podcast, you'll learn the scientific links between neurodiversity and eating disorders, giving you a deeper understanding of how you can face your fears and become truly free. Together, you and me, we will keep putting
one foot.
Hello, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast. I'm your host, Livia Sarah, and today Queen Victoria is back on the podcast. And since it's early and I always need to warm up my voice before early Zoom calls and early recordings with singing, Victoria said I have to sing. Welcome everyone, Victoria is coming on the podcast. My sister can sing and my mom can sing, but I can't sing. I can write and I can coach and I can do other things, but singing's not one of them. All right. Well, Victoria, I'm so excited to have you back on. Everyone, I'm sure, who's listening to this has hopefully already listened to part 1, where we get into who is Victoria, what's her story, how did she go from living in fear to living in abundance. She shared the backstory behind the Body Love binge. And today is going to be all about unrestricted eating. And more importantly, we will address this fear of if I eat unrestricted, I will lose control and let myself go. I will never be able to stop eating and I will gain weight forever. I think you and I can both resonate with that fear. So let's kind of start off with just the big question. How can you be healthy and eat unrestricted for life?
Well, I love this topic so much and I'm happy to be back here. So thank you for having me back on. And I just want to speak to that fear because that was my biggest fear in recovery. And I'm sure you get this. It's, written in all your books. It's the biggest fear that comes up. I literally thought if I let myself go, which I like to reframe to let myself be free. If you imagine like you're holding, restricting, like pulling back, just let yourself go. It's such a gift that you get to give to yourself. I thought I would literally eat chocolate and Ben & Jerry's for the rest of my life 8 times a day and get bigger and bigger and bigger and then basically die alone. That's what I thought would happen to me. The word health that comes into it is when you eat unrestrictedly for the rest of your life. Part of that unrestricted eating, you start to build a connection with your body, you start to build a relationship with your body, and then you naturally fall into like I like to call it intuition eating instead of intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is a bit too ruley still for me.
I have the same thing. I actually recently finished writing another book called How to Get Out of Quasi-Recovery. And I talk about this term intuitive eating, that I think one of the biggest barriers for me, I think, in like giving myself permission to like declare I'm recovered. Because I think almost being able to say I am recovered, being recovered almost follows suit from that decision, right? Because when
Yes.
you say I identify as someone who is recovered, you act like someone who's recovered. And that can't coexist with limitation and restriction. But I
No.
talk about this idea for me that I felt like such a failure, I think especially as an autistic person, that my hunger cues are not what I thought they should be or would be, kind of thing. Like a lot of my hunger is more mental. A lot of the time it's just like, I know I need to eat, even though I don't necessarily feel like a pit in my stomach, like they say. And I felt like a fraud intuitive eater. And I think that's because the root of the term intuitive eating, I think with all of the talk about it, we've kind of come away from what it actually means to be intuitive because literally there's a book titled Intuitive Eating with principles. I'm
I
like,
know,
we
like
don't
that's
need
not intuition.
principles. Right.
No.
It's like writing a book on 10 principles of how to be yourself. You can't do
Yes.
that because everyone's version of being themselves is different. Therefore, different, unique principles, which aren't even principles at all. They're just ways of life, I guess. So yeah, completely agree with you on that one.
What you've just said is so powerful, Lithia, because that's why I actually have a blog or a podcast titled Why I'm Not an Intuitive Eating Coach, is because of these principles. The one I dislike the most is if you notice that you're wanting to eat food, but you're not physically hungry, that's emotional eating. So therefore, don't do that. And it's like, well, that's fucking restriction and that never works.
Totally.
What if I just want to have a brownie for the sake of enjoying the pleasure of the taste of the brownie? Do I have to be hungry?
Exactly. Even this term emotional eating, I'm like, where the hell did this even come from that it's a problem? If food was not supposed to hold any emotional value, honestly, why the fuck do we have restaurants and
Exactly.
cookbooks and
birthday cake.
and dinners and celebrating at a fancy ass restaurant where you're paying $500 for an entree if it
Yes,
was just supposed to be nourishment, right? Food
exactly.
is supposed to release dopamine in our brains because it supports our joy and our survival. I mean, again, it's kind of that example you gave last time of like, you can live on a desert island if you don't want to like be close to these quote unquote addictive foods. Like, yeah, you can say, I'm only going to eat the plainest, most boring, undelicious food ever because I'm just going to nourish my body. Like, you can go ahead and do that if that's how you want to live your life. But I believe that part of having a good life is giving yourself permission to experience joy. And if you can experience joy and nourish your body at the same time, win, 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 right?
Absolutely. That's what the question you asked me leads into. When you eat unrestrictedly for life and then you develop a relationship with your body, which naturally falls into intuition eating, you then naturally, without any kind of the no forcing, a little bit of effort in terms of choice to nourish yourself, but you naturally just eat a balanced, nourishing diet. It's a natural consequence of eating unrestrictedly and tuning into your body and yourself. It's that simple. It's not easy because of everything we're told and unlearning a lot of stuff and the fear, of course. It's that simple. And that's what happened to me. That's what happened to you. That's what happens to our clients. And it's still, I love the messages I get or the calls we get on when they're like, I never thought this day would come. Like, I can't believe I'm just eating a nourishing, balanced diet naturally without any effort. And I'm like, yes, this is what it's all about.
What you just said is so, so, so important. And I feel like we can't drive this point home enough because I think the biggest fear when we hear that term unrestricted eating is that it's always going to be like only wanting cakes and only wanting sugar and only wanting to put Nutella in the microwave and drink it, which I did too. And when I heard you first say that on your podcast, I'm like, twins. But I think, that was for me when I first said, okay, I'm fully going to surrender. I'm fully going to eat unrestricted. I did not even want to touch a piece of broccoli. Like I did not want any vegetables. I wanted only quote unquote addictive, unhealthy junk food that they invest billions of dollars to make highly palatable, right? And I think for me, I was so afraid like this was going to be forever. This was going to be always. Like you said, I was afraid that I was going to just gain hundreds of pounds like forever and die alone because I didn't want to go outside and no one wanted to see me. And it was going to be just exponentially worse than having an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I reached this point though where the unrestricted eating, like it became so powerful in the sense that I had almost no choice to go back to restriction because it kept being met with extreme hunger, kept being met with binges. And I was like, again, I have two options. I can keep going on this route, which isn't making me happy, or I can fully surrender and see what happens. And I remember the day very, very clearly. The first day, I was like, I'm actually like really craving a salad right now. And I was like, whoa, like I
Yes.
remember it so clearly because it was such prominently pleasant surprise. And I think when you get a taste, no pun intended, that your body starts to naturally crave, I don't like to say healthy foods, but you know, what society has labeled as healthy, I guess. And you also realize that like when you have cake or cookies, you suddenly are fine eating a few and you don't need to binge on the entire pack. Those are those data points we are talking about when we're talking about not only neural rewiring, but body trust, like in a full holistic embodied sense.
Definitely. And you can only ever get there through allowance. You
Allowance,
can only
yeah.
get there through allowance, through me allowing myself to drink jars of 750 grams of Nutella in one go. To
Yes.
fully give myself permission to do that was fucking hard.
Yes.
Because of the fear and because of health and because of sugar and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But the other alternative was, like you said, to restrict. Yet I seem to have lost the ability to restrict
Yes.
successfully, so I would binge anyway. So I was like, well, looks like we're just completely going all in. And then over time, everyone's different. It depends how much you allow, but it was only a matter of weeks that I went from like drinking these like full jars in one go to maybe half, to then maybe just like spooning some, to now just being like, I'm literally that I used to think boring, annoying person who forgets that they have like, I've got Nutella in the cupboard.
Yes.
Like, I
Yes.
thought those people were either lying or boring as fuck, to be honest.
I love two things that you brought up. You said that no longer being able to restrict. That is such a big one and such a difficult one that was for me so hard to accept. Like
Yes.
I literally can never go back to anorexia. That
Yeah.
door is just, it's not open for my body anymore. I think, you know, that is one of the hardest parts of the process. And when we shift it to love and abundance and gratitude and say, wow, how adaptive my body is, that after everything I've put it through, it's decided, you know, we're going to protect you from that, from you ever doing that again. Amazing. Another thing you said, that boring as fuck person that you think is lying. Me too. Like my sister who has ADHD, like I remember once I came home from school, I was deep in my eating disorder and I was, you know, comparing and I was always on top of what they were eating because I could only eat if they had also eaten.
Absolutely.
So I remember coming home and it was like, you know, what did you have for lunch? And she was like, lunch? Oh my God, it's 4 o'clock. I totally forgot. Oh my gosh. That was not a pleasant afternoon for any of us. I literally thought, you know, the people who say they forget to eat, I secretly thought like they all had eating disorders. But for me too, I remember like, again, that like wake up moment. I had like a sweet potato in the air fryer. And I like walked away because it had to go in there for like 25 minutes. That's, by the way, a pro tip. Instead of baking your sweet potatoes, put them in the air fryer because it only takes like 25 minutes instead of an hour.
I love my air fryer. Is it 200 degrees or 180?
I'm that like autistic person that does like 190.
Love that. I'm going to copy that.
And because 19 is my number, right? 11, 19, 1999 at 11:09 is my birthday. I actually do everything in Celsius and not in Fahrenheit, even like the temperature, because yesterday I was at the doctor's and they were like, is it nice out? And I was like, yeah, like it's nice. They were like, what's the temperature? And I was like, it's 19. And they were like, what? Like they were so confused. And I was like, oh, that's Celsius. Yeah, I don't think in Fahrenheit. And because it just, the Celsius just makes so much more sense. It does.
Well,
right?
But at the end of the day, 0 in Celsius is freezing point.
Right.
That
It makes so
makes
much
sense.
more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for reference though, like 180 degrees Celsius is like 350 Fahrenheit. So and then 200 degrees Celsius, I think is like 400 Fahrenheit roughly. And I only know that because when we moved to Holland, I would still always make like American recipes and we would always have to convert it. I remember putting the sweet potato in the air fryer. Well, I'm not just gonna sit there and wait on the floor for 25 minutes. So I like started editing my book or doing something else, and I completely forgot that there was a sweet potato in the air fryer. Like I heard the like la 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 music, and then I was like, okay, I'll tend to that later. And like the next day, I would just remember being the whole day. I was like, what happened to my sweet potato? I guess I ate it and like didn't even realize. Which mindless eating is another thing I think is interesting to talk about. But yeah, the next day I went to like put something else in the air fryer and I was like, that's where it is. And I had one of those moments of like, tell me you have ADHD without telling me you have ADHD. Like once I had put my keys in the fridge and I could not find them. And it was just transitioning on. I feel like with the mindless eating and mindful eating, I think that's another one of those intuitive eating principles that I feel is so
Mindful eating.
damaging. Like putting your fork down between bites, chewing slowly. There's even people that say like chew X amount of times before swallowing. I'm like,
what the fuck?
if we're promoting disordered eating, hello?
That's not intuitive, is it? Like intuitive eating is just eating, full stop, and just eat how you want to eat. And some days, if you create the environment for yourself, if you feel like it, some days you might have a candle, you might have music on, you might like smell your food, you might be fully present with it. Other days you might be having a great conversation, like trying to quickly swallow so you can talk. Like mindful eating is not a way to eat less food.
Yeah,
Which
and that's what people turn it into. Exactly. And I think another thing comes up a lot with my clients is a fear of like, if I eat mindlessly, I'll eat too fast. And if I eat too fast, then I'll end up eating too much food. And one example that I gave one of my clients that was really helpful is that, you know, if I'm really thirsty and I haven't drinking water for a couple hours and I'm like, okay, I really need water, I'm going to drink that water probably really fast. I'm going to chug it. Does that mean that I'm going to binge on water? No, because once my body is like, you've had enough water, it's not going to ask for more. And I think that's kind of also, I'm sure you've heard that rule of like, it takes your body 20 minutes to recognize if it's full.
Oh my God, that pisses me off.
I've had binges that would be like probably like well over 5,000 calories within the span of like under 10 minutes. And I was stuffed to the fucking brim. It wasn't like my body was like, nope, we're going to wait 10 more minutes and then we're going to signal full. The body is not a robot. It's not an AI creation that we can program and input data into. You know, it's complex, unknowable, unfathomably deep being. And again, that permission, that allowance, when you can fully surrender and say, I trust my body because I don't know exactly what it is, that is the ultimate form of freedom.
Ultimate. It's like a prime example this morning. I woke up, I went into breakfast outside and I just fancied 2 slices of homemade bread because I'm going to have a bread maker now. So, you know, I'm
now I have to come to the Netherlands quick.
Oh, Lithia, my house smells incredible of this freshly made bread. So I had 2 slices of my homemade bread. One slice was peanut butter, sliced bananas, honey, and the other slice was just grass-fed butter and then sea salt. And I started with the butter and the sea salt because I see the peanut butter as like a desserty type. I'm going to finish off with the sweeter thing. And then halfway through the slice of peanut butter with banana, I was just done. So it wasn't 20 minutes, it was probably like 4. I could have continued eating it. I mean, I could have like continued eating it, but I just had an intuitive feeling like, yeah, I'm done. I'm just going to leave this bit because I'm just done. It's that feeling of no longer wanting to keep eating. It doesn't mean you can't. There was no willpower of like, yeah, maybe I should stop. I was just not wanting to eat anymore. And it's it's not a tangible thing. It's an experience you have
Yeah.
when you've eaten unrestrictedly for the rest of your life and can know you're going to do so. Because I think impending restriction that we can probably
Oh,
talk about,
totally.
because
Yes.
even if you're eating unrestricted now and you're thinking, maybe I should like eat less tomorrow, maybe I should not buy this for next week, that's like impending restriction. And
Yeah.
because our bodies love us so much, and they're like, we are never going to restrict again because we nearly
Right.
died. So
Right.
therefore, if we think there's less coming, let's eat more now just in case to
Yeah.
protect you.
And that's why the, diet starts on Monday never works. Because if you have
Yeah.
decided on Monday, I'm practically going to starve myself, your body's like, okay, we're not going to let that happen. So, yes, exactly. And what you're saying now about the, I just felt done and it isn't something tangible, it totally reminds me of a reel that you posted. I think it was last year. You said, what does it feel like to be satisfied? And you were talking about how, feeling satisfied means you genuinely don't want more food. And, and you said someone could pay you, yeah, and then maybe
Yeah.
you'd eat more, but you like really don't even fancy having more food. I think that idea of like being done and like genuinely not wanting more food, like, and not being hungry, whether that be mental, physical, just the kitchen being a magnetic force pulling you, like it's not there. I think when you have lived with this perceived restriction in your body and this, sense of scarcity and constantly thinking about food, I think it's so hard for people to fathom like reaching
Yes.
that point. And the thing is, like, you won't ever understand or be able to fathom it until you allow yourself and give yourself permission to experience it. And the only way to achieve that point where you can experience it is indeed if you fully allow the
Mm.
unrestricted eating and, more importantly, the weight gain to happen.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
for me, I would eat unrestricted, but then I'd gain weight and then it would be like, oh no, I need to diet again. And
Yeah.
it was constantly this almost planning of like, once this unrestricted eating period is over, I'm going to diet again. But that defeats the
Yeah.
entire fucking purpose.
And what my thing was, so when I learned about weight set point, like what, 4 years ago now, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, right, get it. So everyone has a weight set point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eat intuitively. And then when I feel like I'm recovered, I'm going to go to the lowest point in my set point weight range, which
Right.
actually defeats the whole object because you only arrive at your set point. Yes, it's a range, but your body decides what fucking part of that range it's going to be in.
And how can
When
we even know the exact range too?
Yeah. Well, I had to try and work it out because I was like, right, so the skinniest I've been is this, all that bullshit,
Yes.
trying to grasp control of like,
Yes.
it's that control and safety that I was seeking. So then, of course, lo and behold, when I tried to like get within my lowest end, but still in my set point,
Right.
binges started happening again.
Yeah.
I would go above my set point because my body. So that's when I truly, truly surrendered and was like, you know what? I can't control my body. I can't.
I
And that's
couldn't.
the
Yeah.
best thing that I've ever realized and surrendered into. And so now I just allow my body to guide me and I use my intellect. If I, for example, before this podcast, if I was to eat a 4 course meal and probably just want to lie down and have a nap,
Right.
I'm not going to bring the energy. So I'll use my intellect, like, okay, so I'll have a bigger meal later when I can just chill the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
But there's no restriction. It's just like a choice that suits you. It's nothing to do with restriction.
Exactly, yeah. And I think this applies to us in so many different areas of our lives. Like, for example, if I am going out the door, I will usually just go take a wee before because I don't want to have to go pee like while
Yeah.
I'm freaking in the Uber. And I'm like, damn it, like I really should
Yes.
have
I wish
gone.
I.
That's kind of like similar with eating. If I know I have like 3 client calls, I may not necessarily be hungry before, but I know that if I don't eat something, well, then
Mm.
halfway through, I'm gonna be like, oh shit. And I'm not gonna be able to bring that same energy, like you said. And I think
Yeah.
when we talk about energy, it is all about, that loving energy instead of the fearful energy and the loving energy is, using the intellect, using the logic, and combining that with our innate wisdom that we can't make tangible. Again, like I said, it goes with peeing, it goes with, drinking water, or like if you're going through security and they say like, oh, you gotta dump out your water, you're probably gonna chug that water because you're like, I don't want to have to buy like $5 water
Yes.
behind.
Yeah.
So there's so many areas in which this applies. And I think, when we take away the judgment of like your hunger doesn't always have to be perfect and food doesn't
Oh,
always have to be
no.
perfect. That
Yes.
idea too.
That's
That
really
was
key.
really hard for me to let go of, but it was freeing, that not every meal had to have protein powder and not every dinner
Yes.
had to have so many vegetables. Because ultimately, it all comes down to if I don't follow the tangible structure I've created for myself, then I will overeat. And if I overeat, I'll gain weight. And it comes down to the ultimate judgment, which is weight gain is bad.
And that's not true. So for me, it helped me to kind of at the start of my all in to just be like, I'm most probably going to gain weight. So it wasn't like I started off from, I think, like quite a strong foundation because a lot of people, unless they have us as coaches, of course, start off from the place of like, right, I don't want to be an eating disorder. I want to be free. I'm going all in, but I don't want to gain weight. Well, of course, you don't want to gain weight,
Yeah.
but if you need to get fully on board with the fact that you might and most probably will gain weight,
Yes.
and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it in the coaching support because there's support going to be needed. But when I stopped like deluding myself and thinking that maybe I can go all in, but then not gain so much weight and stay at my low set point, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
I fully was like, okay, I invite our listeners actually to write 100 reasons why they can trust their body. I did that. So it was things like, when I'm cold, my body lets me know that I need to get a jumper or a blanket. When
Yeah.
I need the toilet, like all these reasons why I can trust my body. The only reason I don't think I can trust my body around food is because of all the conditioning, societal conditioning,
Right.
people put money out of us controlling our food. So what if I were to actually just pretend that I can fully trust my instincts around food? I leant into that and it looked like jars of Nutella. It looked like a kilogram of chocolate every evening for weeks.
Yeah,
It
that
looked
was
like,
me and peanut butter.
there you go,
Yeah.
your body needed the fats and the proteins, like to fully trust that, which is really hard because then you've got the thoughts of like, this much sugar isn't actually going to be serving me. The eating disorder is way more harmful than any amount of sugar I will eat at this initial stage of recovery. And I just kept allowing. When you said you fancied a salad, I remember like one day just being like, I really am genuinely craving a green shake. What the heck? What is
Like
happening?
my body's actually here for me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
telling me it wants other stuff now. And then from that day, it started to become more like potatoes and veggies and then
Yeah.
cheese. And then the chocolate just gradually got a bit less, but
Hmm.
it wasn't forced. It was completely natural and it happened naturally. And that's something
Yeah.
we need to keep reminding our listeners because you can't force this shit at all.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I was just making some notes because I was like, I don't want to forget this. You said the 100 reasons why you can trust your body, and another statement that I don't know where you had posted. I think it was on your stories, and I was like, okay, freaking mic drop to this one. You had said it is much easier to go 100% than 99%.
Oh, shall I tell you the exact quote?
Yes, because that to me was like simple, but like, can we get
Yeah.
more powerful than this?
Yeah, it was. And this was from my coach, Jim Fortin. So I'm not going to take credit for this.
Oh,
And he says 100% commitment is easy, 99% commitment is hell. How fucking
yes.
true is that?
Yes, exactly. Because to say, I'm gonna fully surrender, that's 100. And it's clear, you know what you gotta do, you gotta follow that innate wisdom. But 99%, it's like you're always trying to seek that 1%
Yeah.
where it's like, I'm gonna restrict you. I'm not gonna do this. And that is fucking exhausting. And I think that's why a lot of the time, for me personally, quasi recovery was exponentially worse than just having my
Yes.
eating disorder. Because the
Yes.
eating disorder was 100%, going all in was 100%, and quasi recovery was like trying
It's,
to go
yeah.
100%, but then not. And it's
You
like,
use the word try. Have you ever had, I'm sure you've had, because I have this all the time, when
Trying is
people reach
lying and
out,
trying is asking for permission to fail. You taught me that one.
right? So when people reach out to me and they say, they share their beautiful story and they say, I've been trying to recover for 6 years, I immediately see the word try. And I understand what they're saying. They don't know trying is asking for
Right,
permission to fail.
right.
But they haven't recovered because they've been trying. They've
They've been
not been
trying. Yeah.
100%. Because when you 100% commit to recovery and have
You don't
someone
have
to
to
support
try.
you,
Yeah.
when who knows what they're doing, you can't not recover. It's impossible not to recover,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Right. And I mean, again, we can use that try. We can apply that to everything. I mean, I'm not going to try to write a book. I'm going to write the fucking book. I'm not
Exactly.
trying to talk to you right now. I am.
You
you
are.
know and I think
Yeah.
a lot of the time, it's not what often comes up, right? And I'm sure you've heard this is, yeah, but I don't know how to recover. And it's like, of course you don't know how, because you've never done it before, and by
Yeah.
definition we only know how to do something when we've successfully done it before. It's like teaching a kid how to read. The kid, of course, isn't going to know how to read if they've never been given the opportunity, A, to like make mistakes and fall down. But if
Yeah.
that kid says, I'm only going to read if I know I can do it perfectly, well, they're never, ever, ever going to learn how to read, because that's
Nope.
not how the brain nor the body works. And another thing I wanted to bring up, just to like validate anyone's experience out there, is with the sugar, is I had this huge fear that I was going to develop diabetes.
Yeah, me too. I
Yeah.
even got my blood sugar checked like
I got
about
a
5 times.
glucose monitor too. And I had it on for a week. And I just realized, like, okay, this is so dangerous, because I kept like checking it like
Yeah.
more than you're supposed to. And then when it would spike, after I had my entire apple pie from the Albertine, honestly, so good, I would be like, yep, I'm a sugar addict. Like, I'm going to get diabetes. I'm going to become quote unquote obese, right? Because obesity is the biggest thing to fear, even though it's made up. We talked about this last time. And being obese, by the way, can even mean that you're in your optimal healthy range, as Victoria can
Exactly.
attest to. And again, bringing up what you said about that low high range thing, I don't know why, but I think, in this past month, I've actually gained like quite a bit of weight. Like, I've just been really hungry, like more than usual. I haven't been binging. I've just been eating a lot more food, and I've gained weight. And initially, when it started, I was just like, what is wrong with me? Like, why is my body broken? And I think it's important to bring that up, because I love my body, but it's not like I still don't have these thoughts of like, there must be something wrong sometimes. But I was able to like reframe it into like, well, maybe my body's still changing. Like, because
Yeah.
I basically started puberty when I was 19. I'm
Mm.
24 now. So I'm like, that actually makes sense why my body would still want to gain weight now. Because I realized that like now in the past week, it's kind of the extreme hunger has like died down again, and I'm heavier. I've had to buy new clothes. What you said on our last episode has been so helpful to me. It's like, Olivia, do you ever look at a picture of your mom and say like, I just love my mom so much, and you don't love her because of her stomach or the way her legs look, but you just love her because she's her? And I've totally been internalizing that of like, wow, again, like my body is just here for me. It's always shown up for me, and I'm in a period where I need some more food, I need some more nourishment. My body's telling me I need that. And again, when you can make peace with that and just accept, yeah, the weight gain isn't something necessarily I want. Just like, my armpits are
Oh,
not
we both have
necessarily a
that. Yeah.
wonderful thing. I don't necessarily have to like it or want it, but I also don't want to pay my taxes. I also don't want to pay my rent, but I do it because I know it's a necessary aspect of living a life.
It reminds me of a mantra I had, and that was, I want what I need. I want what I need.
I
So
want what I
when I was
need.
questioning, like, how can I still be eating this much chocolate? I'd be like, I want what I need. And I would just trust that. It didn't have to make sense, but I just trusted that.
I love that. I want what I need. I feel like it's one of those things that you have to like say a few times
Yeah.
to get. Yeah, and it actually reminds me of a quote I once heard about recovery, and it was, recovery is not for those who need it, but for those who want it. And it can
Ooh,
almost be applied to this of like, those who want recovery automatically need it. You know what I
yes.
mean? But
Yes.
those who
Yeah.
need recovery but don't want it, that doesn't matter, because need like needing something is actually never a scale tipper, no pun intended.
Right.
Like, everything comes from desire in the end, comes from wanting. Do you want to learn how to navigate eating disorder recovery as an autistic person? Well, then you are definitely going to want to listen to my free audio training, 3 Steps to Recovery from an Eating Disorder as an Autistic Person. In this training, I guide you through 3 simple steps to give you the clarity and confidence you need to use your autistic traits to your advantage in eating disorder recovery. It's like having a private coaching session with me on demand. Whether you believe being autistic is making recovery feel impossible, or confused about what's your eating disorder and what's your autism, or are just feeling stuck, this audio training is the resource for you. And the best part is, it's free $99. That's right, this 45-minute audio training is completely free. So you literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Listen now at livelabelfree.com/free-audio training. What was that again? That was livelabelfree.com/free-audio training. Okay, now can we get back to the episode? Absolutely.
In England, they used to have this. It's a chocolate called Galaxy, but over in the Netherlands, it's called Dove. So it's the same brand.
We have Dove in the US, and that's actually really funny because I was talking with the client in I think she lives in Ireland, and she was telling me about Galaxy, and I was like,
there you go.
No, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's literally Dove, right? It's Dove.
Okay. So
cool. They had this advert when I was growing up, and it was so Galaxy, Dove, the same thing. Its mascot was like this sexy bunny, this like really sexy bunny. And so the advert of her eating this chocolate was like to her to have some time to herself. And then it was saying guilty pleasure. And so it isn't until I've done this work where I'm looking back and I'm like, why the fuck does pleasure have to be guilty?
Right. I mean, that entire terminology, like guilt, you see it on websites, and like people ask you like, what's your guilty pleasure? I'm like, why do these things have to be together? Like, I could say my guilty pleasure is sleeping, but it's like, I can just
need
find
to
pleasure.
sleep.
Right. Right. Like, I mean, again, it all comes back to the labels and the judgments. And I think true freedom, again, it's found when we live label free, when we stop fucking judging everything, and when we come from a place of curiosity, like, what is my body trying to tell me? This doesn't have to be good or bad. And I think because I've been able to shift my mindset so much in that way, honestly, I'd have to say for the first time in my life, like this unplanned, unintentional weight gain that recently happened to me, I was fully at peace with it because there was no longer judgment of this is good or bad. It was just what it is, just like a tree is a tree, just like day is day and night is night. There's no good or bad involved. I mean, again, I think when we stop labeling things, that's where ultimate freedom is found. So I did want to ask, can you tell us about your book? Because, I mean, maybe this is very selfish, but I'm so curious because you told me about this last year, Livia, my inner wisdom is guiding me and calling me to write this book. And yeah, so I'm super curious. Can you tell us, what is your book about? Do you have any idea of when it's coming out?
So I promised myself I would start writing it at the beginning of this year, which I have.
Yes.
I'm not going to share the title yet. It's probably quite obvious what it might be. I had 2 titles in mind, but I think I've chosen one. And then I was torn between like, shall I go down the whole anorexic recovery route? And then I was like, no, because Tabitha Farrar's done a great fucking book that says it all, in the Rehabilitate, Rewire, Recover. And then I was like, shall I just focus only on binge eating? And I'm like, no, I'm just going to share every aspect of the eating disorders that I've experienced. And it's going to be very practical. So it's going to be like step by step. This is how to overcome this. I'm also going to talk about the differences between extreme hunger and binging. They are different. To get out of each one, that's the same. It's always going to be allowance, but a lot of mindset work as well. And it's going to be a lot to do with body love, because that for me, well, it is because I'm writing it. So it's like I'm not trying to, I am. It's being created now.
Yeah.
Because for me, the practical stuff, do this, don't do that, made a lot of sense. But a lot of body image work was missing for me because the weight gain fear is so real, and it was so painful to me. You talk about it, other coaches do, but not many. There's a lot of freedom podcasts that talk about just the food stuff, but then you're left with like, well, what if I'm in a bigger body and quote unquote recovered, but like I'm just hating the body I'm in? Like that was a big thing for me. So I'm talking a lot about the body stuff, and then of course underneath the body stuff there's the child stuff. So one chapter is titled "The Shit Underneath," because we need to go there. Yes, body image is important, but there's stuff underneath that too. So it's kind of a holistic, it's basically like the 5 stages of my real recovery roadmap, which is trauma release, inner child healing, body image, self-love, and then repairing your relationship with food. So it's going to be talking to all aspects of that. So expectations of when it's going to come out, I promised myself a year from start to finish. So that's my goal. So let's see.
Well, I absolutely cannot wait to read it because I think you're definitely right there. There are other coaches, people such as Tabitha Farrar, who have done an excellent job. And, that's just her perspective. And we all have our own value to bring to the table. And I think that, again, is that abundance piece. I think so much of the time, we have this fear of like, I can't do that. I can't create that because someone's already done it before. But, sometimes the exact same phrase or phenomenon just can be said by a completely different person, and just by the way they're saying it, by the way they're bringing it, it just will finally hit you in a completely different way. And that's why I think it's so important to not let, this idea of like, oh, someone's already done that before to hold you back. I'm not saying to copy it word for word. Like, again, freaking Keandra did.
Let's not go there.
Like, there's so many eating disorder recovery coaches out there. And if I would have said, oh, well, there's so many coaches already, there's no point in me doing this, I would be doing a disservice to so many people that need help. And also with like, Rehabilitate, Rewire, Recover, that book really did help me. But in a lot of ways, it didn't, because it's not autism friendly. It's not neurodiversity affirming. Like many of my autistic traits, according to that book, are OCD, ED behaviors. And then when I was going through that and I didn't know I was autistic, I felt like a recovery fraud. Again, it's so important to whatever you read, take it in and take value from it, but don't latch your entire sense of identity and worth to someone else's perspective, because your perspective is going to be unique to you. And it's scary because, of course, you're a fraud because you've never done it before. Because what is the definition of being a fraud? It's doing something that's not conforming to what society has labeled as this is acceptable. But again, it's like when you give yourself permission to be uniquely you, to be that once in a gazillion, bajillion ever creation of the universe, which is itself infinitely unknowable. And you can say, I don't know anything. And that's actually where the power lies. There's so much peace in that.
Oh, so much. And like you were saying, we all have our own energetic signature.
Yes.
And it's the way we say it, it's the way we write it, it's the random swear words I put in here and there that will just land with some people. And Tabitha for our book is incredible. For me, a massive piece missing around body image and trauma stuff, because she didn't have trauma. She loved her body before the anorexia, and she loved her body after. I didn't love my body before that.
Me neither.
Started was, I mean, not the main reason, but it was one of the main reasons why the restrictions started in the first place. So if anyone is listening to this and they're, they don't have to be anything to do with recovery, but if you want to write a book about your life or about anything, or you want to start your own business, like do it. I don't care if there's like a gazillion other people doing what you're doing. There is only one you in this entire universe and ever will be. So in fact, nobody has ever done what you want to do, because there's only one you that could do it. So do it.
Right. Exactly. I can't even put it better. I'm like trying to find something to say to that, but nope, that's it. One more question that I wanted to ask was that we didn't get to last time was, this is kind of random, but like, I just feel like it's fun. What is it like to have an autistic husband?
Oh, yes. Great question. You see, I didn't know he was autistic when I first met him. He didn't either.
Oh, wow.
He started learning a lot about highly sensitive persons. So that's HSP.
Yes.
And that ticked all the boxes. But the more I started to learn about autism in the work I was doing, of course, because a lot of people come to me who are autistic. How does that best said? an autistic
You said
person.
it perfectly, yeah, because I actually talk about this in Rainbow Girl, how, there's autistic person, and I think that is identity first. Yes, because you're saying the identity, autistic identity, before the person, or you have person first language, and that is, person with autism. A lot of people prefer autistic person because person with autism makes us sound like we're just like carrying this burden
Yeah,
with
you've
us.
got
Right.
something
But I
or some.
think with the eating disorder terminology, the opposite is actually helpful. Like for me to say like I was an anorexic, that is like that just makes me cringe because I'm like that was my identity then. And as long as you identify with something, you behave like that identity. Whereas when I
Yeah,
say I had an eating disorder or I have an eating disorder, that allows you to be like, okay, it's not me. I have it, which means I can also get rid of it. But I mean, it is really important to understand that, like, every autistic person, every person on the spectrum has their own preference. I think it's also on culture. It depends. Because Victoria, I don't know if you speak Dutch, but to call
hi
someone
Felicia.
autistic in the Netherlands to say autist, that's actually an insult in the Netherlands.
Oh,
And
right.
because of that, a lot of Dutch people actually prefer to say, ik heb autisme, I have autism, rather than ik ben autistisch or
Ah,
I. So
yes.
it's so dependent on the context and the culture and the stigma and, and a lot of people still have shame around it, especially if they're late diagnosed. So ultimately, it's so important to just ask the person, what do you prefer?
Yeah, exactly that. So it's helped me so much because I sat down with him and I started to ask him questions like, for example, when I said to you last week, oh, let's go to the seaside this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and my immediate response was just do it tomorrow and let's go. And obviously he couldn't deal with that. I say this lovingly, jokingly to him, but he explained it to me. I said, you need 5 weeks to think about it, 2 weeks to think about the drive, 5 days to think about the parking when you get there. Do you mind explaining to me like what goes on, the process in your mind when you hear that question, or like, oh, shall we go to the beach? And he explained it really well. So he does think of all the intricate details. He's
Yeah.
literally thinking of packing the car, driving there. Where are we going to park? Because we have a beautiful Tesla car, which he loves. So he really wants to make sure it's in like a safe space and
Yeah.
all of.
Right.
Where are we going to park the car? Where are we going to stay? Which, of course, I would think about when I'm doing it or when I'm planning it. But
Mm-hmm.
my initial overall, let's go to the beach, just go. But everything for him comes all at once. And so
Yes.
that's why he feels he needs like time to just let it land, think about it, plan, and then do it. And then he can get excited for it.
Yes. The way you're saying it, it's like I can almost hear the surprise in your voice because it's like that's not
Mm,
how I function, right? But
yeah.
as you're saying it, I'm like, oh wow, dude, I feel free. Because
Yes.
I that's really landing for me. And I just because, we have talked about unrestricted eating and the fear of weight gain. And, when you come at it from this autistic perspective of, everything comes at once, I'm thinking of everything, all the details. Like I need to know ahead of time. So it needs to be predictable. Like
Yes.
imagine what this is, how this is like for an autistic person that's
Yeah.
going to go all in, has no idea how much weight they're going to gain, has no idea when the extreme hunger is going to stop, has no idea, when they're going to have it, when they're going to feel satisfied. For me, I actually recently did a post about weight gain, and it was, for autistic people, the fear of weight gain is more rooted in sensory ick than it is about looking a certain way. And
Yeah.
so many people resonated with that because for me, the weight gain, the extreme hunger, it wasn't necessarily all the eating that was like I felt was bad, that was hard, but it was, not knowing exactly how much it was going to be, not knowing when exactly it was going to end, knowing exactly how I would feel when the weight was gained, knowing exactly how the clothes would fit, that's really, really hard for anyone who's autistic listening to this. How I made peace with it was, Victoria, something you said, and that was, I can't fucking control my body. And I
Mm.
accept that I can't control my body, but I can control, my mindset during this entire process. I can choose whether or not I'm going to resist and fight and be angry, or I can choose, say, no, this is what it is, and it's
fucking hard. Yeah, we're dropping a swear word to emphasize here. That's what makes it fucking worth it. Because anything that was worth it was fucking hard. Like my book, your book, like us doing this work, us being on the other side, it is admirable because it was so fucking hard.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like routine also for him. And of course, black or white. So he's never had an eating disorder. It's nothing to do with eating for him. But let's say he gets up later than normal.
Oh yeah, that'll screw me up.
Let's say his morning routine isn't happening at the same time, like the meditation, visualization. It won't just be, oh well, that didn't work out, so I'll just pick up and continue throughout my day, my routine. It's like the day's ruined, not from like a negative standpoint always, but the day can't continue in structure anymore because now it's just ruined.
Right.
And so it's like so all or nothing. So even with food, and he's never had an eating disorder, and we just eat like naturally well together. If he's, for example, had a day off coaching, so he's not had any clients, I guarantee you, and I could put money on this, when I'm starting to cook dinner, he'll go, shall we get a takeaway? Which is fine by me. And it's because I know him now, the way his brain works, because he's seen it as a non-working day.
Right.
He likes to see the takeaway as a non-working day food because it all fits in with his view of that day. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, you want to learn how to navigate eating disorder recovery as an autistic
the day is all
person?
messed up, the day is ruined.
Like, going to want
I
to
don't
listen
have
to
that
my free
anymore.
audio
Like, it's hard for me to accept, when I haven't been able to fall asleep and I wake up later.
In this training,
I'm
I
like,
guide
oh gosh,
you through
like
three
I wasn't able
simple
to do my
steps
yoga
to
this
give you the
morning because
clarity and
I need to do that because I have like really bad chronic neck pain, and if I don't do my stretches, I'm gonna have a headache the entire fucking day. Yeah, so that like then really becomes stressful. But again, like what you resist persists, and I've just noticed like if I say like, oh, this has ruined my whole day, again, then I basically decide my whole day is ruined. But during my eating disorder, I remember, every meal on the meal plan had to happen like on the dot, like at a certain time. And if we would like be driving, because we'd get stuck in traffic, and I wouldn't be home at like 2:59, so I could start making my snack at 3 p.m. It would be like 3:30, and I'd say, can't have my snack anymore because everything's messed up anyways. Dinner doesn't have to be either, and night snack is awful, and everything is just messed up. And like looking back, definitely was the eating disorder. And I think being autistic emphasized that for the reasons you're saying, like with Wouter. So
I had a similar experience with the timings, probably not to your extent, but I remember being so angry if someone made me 5 minutes late from my set time when I would eat this piece of flapjack at this time with a cup of tea. I was like furious at them.
Yeah.
Like I would never really show it to them because, I was too much of a people pleaser for that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I was like, you need to leave immediately.
Right. Yeah.
With the timings. And then last thing I want to share, because this is so cute. Like I love this about it, and I think this is an autistic thing, and I love it so much. So he loves Lego. First of all, he won't just buy one Lego set. He'll buy like 5 ready to go, so he's got them in bulk. Then he won't just build Lego. He'll build Lego whilst he's listening to Lego music. And then when he games, he'll do a gaming Lego game and then watch people game Lego games. Like it's Lego obsession everywhere.
I love it. That sounds like me with when I was younger, we had Playmobil, and my grandma, like bless her heart, but she would like come to us and visit us, and she would pay like way extra money because she'd be coming in from the Netherlands to Boston, and she'd pay like way extra money to get like an extra suitcase that weighed like 100 pounds, and it would just be full of Playmobil. And I remember my parents were like, Trix, like, why? You shouldn't spoil the kids like this. And she'd be like, but look how happy I made them. And we would have like the yellow house, and we'd have the castle, and we'd have the police station, and I would make just these whole cities But the irony of them was that, like, my friends would come over and like would want to play with the little people, but I'd be like, no, you cannot play
No.
with it. You just look at it. You just
Yes, it's got to be
admire the
perfect.
beauty. Something that I'm thinking would be so fun is to have you and Wouter on together.
Oh yeah,
I don't know
that
if
would
he
be
does podcasts.
yeah, he
But
does. He has his own part. He's all in Dutch, but he speaks perfect English, so we could have it in English.
yeah, because like anyone who's Dutch listening to this, like Wouter Kleinsman, which is Victoria's last name, that is like the Duchess of the Dutch you can get.
I'm called Victoria Little Man, apparently. That's what it translates
Exactly.
to.
Kleinsman is little man.
Yeah.
Yes, which
And
is
I
funny.
think he also did sound a little bit like Twents because we're in Hengelo.
Yeah.
However, now the last 3 people we've met that we've never met before, we speak English when they hear that I'm English, and they always say to him, "You have an Ingles accent like when you speak Dutch," and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm like rubbing off on you on so many ways." So I don't know if he has like a Dutch English accent, but people used to think he was German or Twents, and now they're like,
Yeah.
"Are you English or are you Dutch?" And I'm like, "Well, he sounds very Dutch to me with the very strong accent, but
Oh, well, I can't wait to hear him talk. Yeah, because the Dutch have a very noteworthy accent when they speak
yes,
English.
they
And
do."
Bessel van der Kolk, I was at the trauma conference a few weeks ago.
You met him?
I have a picture with him. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my fucking God,
Yeah.
yes, good."
Yeah. And when he talks, like, it's very clearly like he's Dutch. And he actually said something during the conference that was literally like a typical Dutch thing to say, but he like translated it to English. It was like a very typical Dutch phrase. It was, kind of teasingly, but it wasn't very professional of him, if I'm being honest. But have you ever heard in Dutch when they say, het is goed met je?
Yeah, is it good with you?
Yeah, but the English translation is more like it's all good. Like, but when you say it in Dutch, there's this like undertone of like het is goed met je, which means like you're fine, like you're not messed up mentally kind of thing. Het is goed met je. And someone asked like a very valid question during the conference, but he didn't like understand the question. So he just said, it's all good. Next. And
Oh
I was
no.
yeah, and that was like really rude. But anyways, I just thought that was funny because the way he said it, I was like, I could tell that he had initially translated it from Dutch.
Yeah.
So, and on like, you have to be a Dutch person to like see that, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're going so off topic here, but thank you so much, Victoria, again for coming back on. I feel like listeners are going to get so much from this entire conversation. Can't wait for it to come out, and can't wait for your book to come out, and can't wait for you to read it. Can't wait to come and see you in Hengelo because I've never been to the west side of the Netherlands ever.
It's beautiful. It is
Yeah.
beautiful. If you like countryside, I mean, you know the Netherlands, but there's so many countryside and forests and trees and water. It's gorgeous.
I love that because I'm in like Boston right now, but let's just say recording my audiobook was a stressful, hard time because I live right next to a school. So at like certain times they have like breaks and recess. So I would hear them playing and I would be like just like anxiously waiting by the window. And then as soon as they'd go back inside, I'd be like, okay, I have an hour to record. And then and yeah, so I'm really glad I finished recording it. But yeah, I mean, even for me now, like living like really close to the city, I want to live in like a place that's pretty like quiet. And it sounds like Hangzhou is just that. So
It's very
yeah.
quiet. No one really goes to like, I remember when I used to go to Schiphol Airport and I used to visit Wouter before I moved here. And I'm a chatty person in case no one knew that. And I'd get chatting to people like when I'd buy stuff and they'll be like, "Oh, you're moving to Holland. Where are you moving to?" And I'll be like, "Hengelo." And they'll be like, "Hengelo? Why are you
Why?
moving to Hengelo?"
Yeah,
And I'm like,
right.
"Well, it's for a man." And they're like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. No one
Right.
goes to Hengelo." But they should because it's beautiful.
But so why does Wouter live there? Just we're
He was just
curious.
born. He was just born here and he's
Oh,
just never
okay.
really like gone away
Never
from it.
left. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. But yeah, I can't wait to visit because when you show your walks with Hero, I'm like, wow, that's so beautiful. We cannot see each other soon enough.
And we'll
Thanks,
share
everyone.
with
Yes.
when we do, of course, on our stories. We'll be like,
Oh,
"Yeah, we're in
totally.
person."
And we should do a live podcast. That would be
Yes,
so fun.
literally next to each other. 1,000% we're
Yes.
doing that.
You did that with Julia, right?
Yes,
That,
because she's from England, so
yeah.
it's not really far for her to come. But that was really nice for her to be like literally there. next
Yes,
to me.
like I literally watched you guys do that episode because now Spotify has like the video feature.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, they're like next to each other in real life.
It was so
Yeah,
nice.
it was so cute. Okay, but yeah, Victoria, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any like final words of wisdom that you want to share?
You can do it. Like anyone listening who has been on the edge or quote unquote trying to go all in, trying to recover, you can fucking do this, because I'm going to end with a quote that you said in your first book, Rainbow Girl.
Oh.
Have you ever met a person who regrets recovery? No.
Right. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful note to end on. Well, everyone, Victoria shares her links and her programs and her offers and just amazing resources in part 1 at the end. So if you need a refresher on that, you better go back and listen to that entire episode. And of course, I'll leave all the links, Victoria, that you so kindly provided, everything in the show notes. And if everyone wants just like a one-stop shop to learn everything about you, what would be the one best place to head over to?
VictoriaKleinsman.com. Everything's
Perfect.
there.
Yes, and everything again will be in the show notes. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Victoria, for chatting with me, and we will chat with you all later in our own podcast. All right. Bye.
Much love. Bye.
Just one foot in front of the other, and you'll see around the corner soon.
This podcast has been recorded by your host, Liv. This podcast has been edited by my small but mighty Live Label Free team, and the beautiful song One Foot in Front of the Other that you are now listening to was written and recorded by my beautiful mom, Louise Alexandra. I am so grateful for my team and everyone who supports Live Label Free. Together, we are always stronger.